Hello, and welcome to the Embrace Balance, Discover Joy podcast. I'm Amanda Butland, your host and intuitive life coach. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Embrace Balance, Discover Joy podcast. Today, my special guest is Cong Nie. Cong, it's so great to have you with me today.
Thank you, Amanda. It's great to speak to you too.
Awesome. Well, I always like to start out with a little icebreaker question. Would you mind sharing with us what hobby or activity brings you the most joy and why?
I would say traveling. I have been to over 50 countries so far, and it keeps counting. And my next big destination is Africa, and I look forward to them. Traveling always bring me a lot of joy and actually peace, and it inspired a lot of my philosophy in coaching too.
Oh, wow. I love that. Yes, travel is one of those things that I also love to do. And you've been to probably way many more countries than I have. So that is amazing. And Africa sounds like an amazing adventure. So I wish you, great, amazing journeys and experiences while you're there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So we're just going to dive right in. We're going to talk about coaching today.
Okay.
And I know you are a life coach, and I would love if you wouldn't mind sharing with us sort of what your journey was to becoming a life coach, how that happened.
Sure. I traveled a little bit of unconventional path. I was born in China, and throughout my school years, I was mostly focused on the more STEM scientific major. So I'm very much into, critical thinking, logical thinking. And then it has been serving me well for the past 20, 30 years. And then I started working in a corporate environment, doing data science job, which is something I'm pretty good at. But I feel something is always missing. And then I cannot name it directly. But I started my soul searching. And then I got into a lot of the spiritual studies, and I am able to connect with my higher self and the universe a little bit more throughout the soul searching process. And then at some point, I feel the inner voice keeps telling me it's time to share this wisdom with the broader world, and you use your knowledge to serve other people. And when you're serving other people, you're deepen your own study. So that's why I started looking into life coaching. And yeah, and since then, I have been studying with amazing mentors and coaches like yourself. And the rest is history.
Well, I love that, sort of less than conventional
Mhm.
journey to coaching with,
Mhm.
starting really with a very logical, analytical background.
Mhm.
So I wanted to touch on something that you briefly said there
Mhm.
around, when you serve others, you learn more or you discover more about yourself. And so I would love to sort of maybe just chat a little bit more about that, sort of that philosophy of when you're serving others, just more
Yeah.
comes to you.
Mm. Yes. I think in any kind of teaching, when you are, let's say, on a mission of serving others or teaching, you need to do a lot of the self-reflection and understand some of the concept better because other people might touch on things that you never thought about, or they have a problem or challenge that you have never seen. And in that process of teaching, serving others, and in preparation to serve others, you deepen a lot of your self knowledge about things that you might have never thought about because of this interaction between you and the people you touched upon. So I think it's a magical process of co-creating and a growth process. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It is definitely a growth process. Like you mentioned, when you are serving others and they're experiencing something maybe that you haven't experienced before, and how you can learn from sort of that experience. But I often find also, right, that sometimes, as we're coaching others and experiencing different things for other people, but also, you're on this your own, right, growth path,
Yeah.
right? Really learning from others, their experiences, and then there's a lot of self-discovery that happens, right, within yourself. And it's just so fascinating to me how when you become a coach or when you're training to be a coach, there's so much self-work that you're also doing to
Mhm.
sort of elevate your own self, your own skills.
Mhm.
Um, and there's always so much interesting self-discovery that sort of happens as part of that process, right?
Exactly. And I will even go out and say, I think a lot of the coach peer I encountered, they focus a lot more on self-discovery, self-healing, and self-improvement before they even go out and serve other clients. And a lot of them actually are very happy and content about just study coaching to help themselves to grow, and it's completely okay. Yeah, and I think it's a beautiful thing to witness people's growth. And I also want to use the analogy. I feel a lot of times in our own life, we are the director, we are the producer of our own life, and anything else, anyone who you encountered, helped, or served. Um, they are there to support you to learn better. So in a way, we have a lot of peers and we have community and we're never lonely. But in a way, we are designing our life as we wish, and everything, including your interaction with other people, can be seen as a self-discovery and self-directed journey. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. You're right. Oftentimes, especially when we interact with new people, right?
Mhm.
There's always, how is that interaction going? What are things that you learn about yourself as you interact with people that, different personalities, different, backgrounds and things like that. So that's so interesting.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, because you are a life coach, and I'm very interested in sort of, what it is that, is your sort of your focus in your practice, like the specific niche that you serve. Because I know like coaches covered like so many different areas, and everybody sort of has their own little special thing. So I would love to hear maybe about your little special thing that you that you focus on in your practice.
Sure. I think I'm inspired by my own journey of transforming myself from a very logical person to someone who never abandoned logic, but also incorporate my intuition into the process to make better decision and make better choice in my life. And I'm very inspired by my own transformation. So I would say my specialty is to help people who especially work in a corporate environment or have a lot of structural way of thinking, but they are a little bit maybe too invested in that direction, and it sometimes becomes a hurdle for their further growth because you want to bring that intuition, that creative mind into your process. So I think my mission is always to help people who are traveling on that path, who's struggling a little bit to incorporate intuition into their decision making to deal with all the broader uncertainty that we are facing. And that's something that I'm very passionate about. And I think I'm also very passionate about teaching general mindfulness and how to use it to especially help people who are a little bit more emotional sensitive to develop that resilience to face any situation they might encounter. So those are the two things that I'm most passionate about.
Great. I love that. That first part, and we can talk about mindfulness in a second because I know that you're passionate about that topic. But the first thing that you mentioned, sort of like people who are, really really analytical, really logical, sort of have that background. Maybe they work in a corporate environment and that's just sort of where they've been, and not really having really tapped into or trusted sort of the intuition that might come up for them, and to be able to sort of help sort of open that up,
Yeah.
that open that world for people, in order to sort of tap into that, the sort of beyond just the logical mind. So I really love that, because what you said, it like, I think you said sort of like it sort of limits sort of, what they can do.
Mhm.
And when you sort of open those doors to more than just the logical mind, how maybe colorful their world can become.
Mhm.
So I love that you shared that, and that's sort of one of the things that you focus on.
Yeah, thank you. And to be honest, a lot of the great mind of the world, people like Einstein, Steve Jobs, they also highly valued intuition because that's where you can tap into things that you can never even imagine or think about. Because they're coming from, a better source. They're not coming from just thinking. And a lot of times, especially when we're facing a new situation, when we need to design or create something new, we need that out of this world information to inform you to, you know, break the rules and make the world a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's go back to mindfulness, because I know that you're
Yeah.
very passionate about that too.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and just sort of, you know, having helping people sort of get to a place where, they can be, they're like a little bit more mindful about what's going on, because when you are sort of stuck in sort of that logical analytical mind,
Mhm.
it's very focused on sort of very task oriented, very strategic things. And then when you talk about mindfulness, it's sort of like, it's not necessarily the opposite, but it's a different way of sort of looking at the world, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you could talk a little bit more about sort of all the mindfulness stuff.
Yeah. So for me, I think mindfulness is just having a very strong awareness of all the things that's going on inside of yourself and around you. And even with all those, very nuanced information, you're not overwhelmed or consumed by all this information. You're still holding your own space and personality and being able to say that, hey, I know I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling angry, and people are putting pressure on me. But you know what? I'm not consumed. I'm not scared by any of those information. I can still make choices based on, what is information are informing me. So in another way, it's very much about developing this observer's mind. I almost feel like you're living this life in this body, but also a little bit outside of this body. You can see what's going on inside of yourself and outside in this world you're facing. Um, and then be able to show this person, as beautiful as you are, um, the love and the kindness and the compassion to hold yourself together in any kind of situation and make the best decision from that point of love and compassion. So for me,
Mm,
that's what mindfulness is about. It is, I think a lot of times when people talk about mindfulness, they're associating mindfulness with stillness, sitting quietly, meditating, or doing self-reflection. I think all those are very helpful and sometimes necessary. But for me, mindfulness is not just about sitting still. It is actually very dynamic. It can happen in any moment. It can happen in your work, it can happen in your family life, can happen when you're doing exercise, talking to people, in any kind of situation, you can apply that mindfulness into your conversation, into your action.
mm,
And then I think the more we realize that there are a lot of power in our choices and we have a lot of power to choose in any kind of situation, the more mindful is our action, our speech, And hopefully, with that kind of awareness, we can make the world a better place.
Mhm. Yeah, I like how you talk about mindfulness because this is a little bit different than what a lot of people think, right? And I love how you talk about it sort of like as being an observer and really observing what's happening and not just maybe inside, but like not just outside observing, but also inside observing, right? Like what's going on in your mind. And actually, as you were describing that, it made me think of a book that I'd read. It's called The
Mhm.
Untethered Soul. I'm not sure if you've read it or heard about it, but
Yeah, I think so.
you
Is
have.
that with a horse running on the beach?
Yes,
That's
it
the cover?
is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
read it before. Yeah.
Yeah, because it talks about sort of like, the voice in your head and just being like it's almost like you're observing that, right? And so that's why when you were talking about sort of like being the observer, it made me think of that because oftentimes people and for people that haven't read the book, it's written by Michael Singer, but really it talks about sort of like um the voice in your head and how it's not you and how you should observe it as like a voice that because oftentimes that voice is critical and how to sort of like just sort of live with it but
Mhm.
understand it and work with it in a way that it's not sort of controlling your emotions and your feelings. So I don't know if it's like a totally off topic but like that just came to me when you were talking about like sort of being the observer.
I think it's entirely related. And I think a lot of times when the negative voice show up or you are feeling nervous or feeling sad, maybe there's a voice or there's a personality inside of you who tries to control that, like, oh, I cannot be this sad person, I cannot be this nervous person, and so I need to control it and be tight. That's actually the opposite of being mindfulness. I think being mindfulness or being in that observational mode is about just telling yourself, hey, wow, I notice I feel nervous. Wow, I notice I'm shaking a little bit. But instead of trying to control it, you try to show the love and compassion for that part of you who is nervous, who is feeling a little bit hurt, and tell them it's okay. I think the more you show kindness to that part of you who's suffering a little bit in that moment, um, the more you are able to actually make that part of you feel more comfortable in themselves and be brave and have the courage to do what you need to do.
I love that message, I love what you just sort of how you describe sort of like
Mhm.
it's like giving yourself grace, right? It's like being kind to the parts of yourself, not beating yourself up because so many times, like so often, people are so critical of themselves. They're so judgmental of themselves. They beat themselves up, if they're replaying something in their mind about how
Yeah.
they reacted or
Mhm.
interacted in a certain situation. So I love how you sort of describe that sort of observing it
Yeah.
and just giving it like love and it's okay, right? That there's no wrong piece of you,
Mhm. Mhm.
there's no wrong part of anybody. Everybody's sort of like everybody's just trying to live their lives the best way they can, right? And sometimes it's sometimes hard when people are hearing that voice and they're beating themselves up. So I love how you sort of describe that process of just
Mhm.
observing and giving
Yeah.
it some love.
Absolutely. And I will also say that sometimes by, showing, being this observer's mind, sometimes you will notice some pattern that's interesting. For example, I recently I had a conversation at work and one of my colleague is telling me, hey, you shouldn't do this. It's better to do something another way. I noticed that there's anger rising in me that I just don't like to be judged or don't like to be schooled in a way. So and then it bothers me in my body and I can sense the nervousness rising. And then using that observational mind, I was thinking, that's interesting because why do I feel even angry? Because other people is just trying to give me advice instead of trying to insult me or making me feel hurt. So I was able to observe such pattern and then pay attention to that part of me who's feeling a little bit hurt when someone may try to give you an opinion that you don't like. Um, and then, I mean, it maybe showed some mm, the wounds that's inside of me that still haven't been healed. But then because of my observation and this insight, I am able to, maybe do a little bit of self-discovery and trying to figure out, hey, what's going on? Like, why do I feel more triggered in this kind of situation? And then now I can work a little bit more strategically with myself to work on that pattern and tell myself that hey, it is safe in that situation. I mean, even if other people give you some advice that you don't like to hear, it doesn't mean that you lose your value in any shape or form. It's just a piece of information, and next time something come up, I might be able to treat the situation with more grace and say, hey, yes, this is just a piece of information. I can choose how to use it, and it doesn't hurt me. So I think that mindfulness and observational mind can help you really look into the patterns that you have in your life and potentially grow out of it. Mhm.
Yeah, I love that example you shared. Really, just like identifying that pattern, sort of that
Mhm.
trigger, and
Mhm.
being able to sort of work through it. How empowering is that to have to
Yeah.
be able to do that for yourself, right? To be
Mhm.
able to, identify it, work through it, and then
Mhm.
come out on the other side where that sort of thing isn't going to create that emotion within you anymore because you've sort of worked through it and solved sort of the trigger that was behind it. So that's amazing. And,
Mhm.
how empowering is it for you to share that, skill,
Yeah.
right, with
Thank
your clients,
you.
and enable them and empower them to sort of solve those things for themselves.
Yeah, I would say a lot of the mission of a life coach is helping the client to identify patterns that they might or might not have awareness about.
Mm.
So provoking awareness is a key component about, a coach's job. And in a way, that's mindfulness, but with a coach's help. And I guess my goal with any client will be maybe through some initial time together, they will be able to develop this self-awareness more frequently. And now they have that great tool of, mindfulness and be able to, identify patterns about themselves and work on it.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I just I love the work that you do, and I think it's amazing to be able to, help people sort of, um, identify those. And like you said, in the beginning, yes, the life coach does help people to identify those things because oftentimes it's hard. Unless you've done a lot of work already to just
Yeah,
just walk around and figure these things out on your own,
yeah.
but after having worked with somebody who helps you identify the patterns, how to do that, that then are empowered to sort of figure that out, be able to see them themselves. And sometimes maybe you still need a life coach to help you work through, right,
Mhm.
some of those challenges, how to dig deep into those triggers and how to overcome them. But yeah, to be able to help people through those, that's the work.
And I would say that's the part of the work that I'm most passionate about. And
Mhm.
when I see people can grow out of their own limiting belief or old patterns and be able to evolve and be the better version of themselves,
Mhm.
it's the most rewarding part of being.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. To be able to free people from sort of, like you said, those limiting beliefs, at empowering people and allowing them to sort of almost like rediscover themselves, right? Their authentic selves.
Yes.
Um, yeah, amazing. All right, so I do want to start wrapping up. This has been an amazing conversation.
Uh-huh.
But before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience today? Any special message you would like to put out to the world?
Um, that you are beautiful, love yourself, be kind to yourself. Sometimes it's better to Um, think about things holistically other than pushing for things in a particular direction. And yeah, you're on a great path and keep doing the great work.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Yes, everybody needs to know, right, that they're all, everybody's special, everybody's unique, everybody has, a place, and you has unique gifts, and they're here because everybody's different and everybody's here for a specific, everybody's here for a reason. Um, so yes, so thank you again, and thank you so much for being with me today, Song. It's been so great chatting with you. I've had a great time.
Uh-huh. Same here, same here.
I invite you to subscribe to the Embrace Balance Discover Joy podcast and join our community. If you feel inspired by what you hear, please leave a review and share this podcast with others who might benefit. And remember, it's never too late to embrace balance and discover joy in your life. Stay tuned for our upcoming episodes filled with inspiring stories and valuable insights. Until next time, take care and be kind to yourself.